Hello and welcome back to a new Elite Dangerous video. Today, everything you have to know about silent running and the heating system, at least a big part of the heating system. So, some of you, especially the new commanders in here, don't really know what silent running is, and even if they know what it is, they don't really know when you can use it and what's the whole purpose of silent running in the first place. So, first of all, silent running is the button, usually it's the bound to the delete button on your keyboard, and you can use it whenever you want. Once you use it, you'll lose your shields and your heat signature will be obscured, and you will overheat pretty quickly if you keep it for too long on. Anyways, but what's the point in using silent running in the first place, right? So, the ship's visibility, so how someone can detect you, depends on how hot your ship is, so on the heat level. As you can see at the moment, on the slide on the left panel in the middle, I have a heat level of 10% at the moment, because I have deactivated more or less everything except, I have deactivated everything except life support and sensors, which you can see on the fourth panel, so in the panel on the right side, under modules. So, like I said, the thing is how someone can detect you depends on your heating level. As you can see, I have some multiple signatures here. Those are pretty hot, so that's why we can detect them from this far out, since around 12 kilometers away is not really next to it. By the way, this technique only works up until a certain amount, up until a certain distance, because every sensor has a more or less minimum distance where it detects everything, even when you have silent running. So the next thing is, now if you look at the very right side, slightly above the fuel count, you have this slight wavy line which slightly oscillates around. This shows your thermal signature, and this is more or less something where you can measure how easy or difficult you are to detect, and of course the heating level on this side. But they have a very important relation, because every system you use in your ship generates heat, and your heat has to be get away from your ship, otherwise you'll just overheat and all the time. That's definitely not the way something should be, right? And that's why there's a cooling system which tries to emit all the heat into outer space, and there because of that cool your ship. And if you go into the exterior view, you can see this pretty well. If I can if I go slightly above the Aspect Explorer, which I'm in at the moment, this central beam, which is now closed, is the cooling system, and once the ship is really hot, it will open up and try to get rid of more heat. Because I have now only 10% heating level, I'm not really running hot. If you can look on the right side, I even have some crystalline structures, so some ice built up around the canopy, and this no message needed at the moment. So as you can see over on the side of the canopy, there's a lot of ice, so that more or less shows that we're pretty cold, or the ship is running pretty cold. And the same goes for this the heat signature on the left side. Now if we were to activate all the important, or everything more or less, okay, and let's take the heat signature as well. Now, and we get scanned immediately. That's kind of funny. So if we were in, let's just do it silent running. Now we can't get scanned because we're silent running. So probably, except there's someone right next to us. Is there someone? Yeah, there's someone pretty close. And now they can scan. So you can see right 300 meters away, and only 300 meters away they can scan us. If we were to, okay, now it's too slow, but you can see now they scanned us. That's really convenient at the moment. Anyways, now inside running, the heat's building up. We have critical temperature around 80%. I'll just throw it off in just 1 second after we hit 90 something. And there you go. And now I can show you you can see the central part opening up, and this is the cooling system which will get rid of all the excess heat. Now around 45%, which is more or less normal, we get that back. Now going back to the right side, we can see again this oscillating line, which is pretty more solid than it was in the beginning. And once we're in silent running, there's no line, and there's just a silent running sign, which shows that all the heat is not being vented out into space, well, vented, trying to disperse into space, but kept in the ship, and therefore we have a low heat signature, and nobody can detect us and scan us, or not nobody, but it's way more it's more difficult to scan us. Now if we go again up into a very high temperature and activate it at 98, you can see that the slide is very thick, and you can really see this signature, like very good. Now everybody can see us very good. And like I said, once you cool yourself off by either shutting down all those different systems here, or by deploying a heatsink, which I will deploy in just 1 second, you can keep your ship cool or colder and avoid or just make it more difficult that somebody can scan you. If we are in silent running, we can of course fly around and do whatever we want to, and just boosting up again, getting the temperature into a dangerously high, like for example 80%. Now you can deploy heatsink, and then the temperature goes down, and you can continue flying around it in silent running for, well, not quite indefinite time. You can see again crystals and icy structures going across a canopy, and with that you can fly longer without overheating. And that's more or less the whole point of silent running. There you go. So now when do you want to heatsink? Now when do you want to use the silent running? That's a good question. So for when you're a smuggler and don't want to get scanned by entering a station, usually we'll have above the heat signature a marker which tells you whether you're wanted, whether you were transporting illegal goods or some illegal passengers if you're running passenger missions, and that's more or less the indicator whether you should use or shouldn't use silent running. Because if you have there something red being on that point, well, something red is there, then you will be attacked if a security police will scan you. And since you don't want to get killed by the security forces, you should just try to slip past their scans. And how can you slip past their scans? Yes, of course, by using silent running, and that's a very important thing that's one very good way to enter stations even though you're wanted, and then do whatever you want to do there. There's also slightly a secondary use in PvP, but since I'm not a PvP player, I don't really know too much about it. But the thing I do know is, like I said in the beginning, the sensors really can pick up even if you're in silent running, but it makes it more difficult. So if your ship is cool, then picking you up with sensors is more difficult. And with that in mind, you could use silent running to get pretty close to another enemy player or just to another player and try to blow him up before he detects you, and then more or less try to run away. Or of course, if you're being chased by somebody else and you can get into a certain amount of like, I don't know, maybe 5 kilometers or so, then pop silent running, go turn around the corner, stay behind an asteroid in an asteroid belt or whatever, and wait until they get again maybe 5 kilometers away and then fly in the other direction, for example. I've never tried this, but this is something that could work in theory. Well, and I think that's more or less everything you have to know about silent running and how you can use it and why it is in there, and how the heat even works, up until to a certain degree, of course, that is. Anyways, I hope I've helped you out a little bit. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, Space Sheep out.